Hey guys, welcome to the UNCOMMODiFiED podcast and to another UNCORK conversation. Today, I want to welcome Brady Wilson to the show. Brady, thanks for joining me.
Hey, my privilege.
Awesome. I am really looking forward to this conversation. I was thinking back, Brady, you realize you're old when you can't remember when you met somebody. But I was thinking back in time, and I believe it was around 1996 that I first had the privilege of encountering you.
Mm.
And here's what I want to say to my listeners about Brady. Brady is he's an awesome guy. I mean, if you get a chance to meet Brady, you should meet him because he is an awesome guy. He is involved in so many different things, and he brings just this powerful sense of himself to everything he does. He's a thought leader. He's an author, a co-founder of a company called Juice, and since 1993, he's been clear about his mission, which is really critical, I think. And we'll maybe tuck into that a little bit. But you've been clear about your mission, which really, as I understand it, it's got some awesome, powerful words in it because it's about helping businesses and people pulsate with creativity, and that's a powerful word. And so over the years, I know you've had the opportunity to inspire countless companies and people to move beyond just tradition in their human strategies, unlocking the energy and power in their organization, which really not in the organization, in its people. And that's what I love about you. You have this deep understanding that organizations are all about people. On the other side, you're a creator, you're an author, you've written 4 books dedicated to improving employee performance and business results. Those books are Juice, The Power of Conversation, Love at Work, Finding the Sticking Point, and your most recent book, Brady, Beyond Engagement. And hey guys, if you haven't ever encountered Brady, if you've never read anything he's written, find him online, find his books. You need to meet Brady, whether you do it in person or through the resources he's created. You need to encounter Brady. Your organizations need to encounter Brady because I believe his message is not only thought-provoking, but it's timely. And so, as all great conversations for me, Brady, start off, all great uncorked conversations, and I'll be honest, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Every once in a while, I may have a beer, but today we've decided we're going to kick off our conversation with a cup of tea. So I'm going to raise my cup of tea to you, sir,
Hey, to
and
you too.
I'm going to cheers you with my tea.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Tea is a good drink. I've been drinking tea since I was a little boy.
Yeah, it's a great drink.
It is a great drink, 100%. It's an awesome drink and it's a great conversation starter. So here's how I want to start our conversation today, Brady. Again, thanks so much for your time. There's three
Hey, welcome.
words that I want to cast out to start
Mhm.
this conversation. These 3 words are, and as you and I have talked and thought a little bit of this conversation, they're 3 words that have really come to the forefront for me: collisions,
Mhm.
collaborations, and creativity. So
Mm.
3 words: collision, collaboration, and creativity. And I want you to talk a little bit about the impact of the last season, what's happening for people, and how should leaders understand these 3 ideas or forces, and what should they do as they think about it?
Mhm. I love the story of Jobs, right? And he ends up at Pixar, and he deciding, how do I structure the physical space? And a lot of your listeners will know this, but basically he decided that at the hub will be the cafeteria, the washrooms, the photocopy, everything that you need, where you would go and walk to get something. It will be at the hub. And what he was doing is basically saying, I want to ensure that the flow of energy at Pixar is such that computer geeks, when they walk in the washroom, are going to be standing beside an animator. And there's going to be these accidental collaborative collisions happening. And, with, I don't know, 12 blockbuster successes, like unbelievable. It really played out. But there are all sorts of spaces that we can create, all sorts of fields that we can create. So gravitational field, etc. But he created a possibility field
Hmm.
by designing those collaborative collisions that would spawn creativity.
Hmm.
And if you think about space, it's the thing we don't have right now, Tim. We don't have buffer, we don't have margin, we don't have any capacity. And so could we be just a little more mindful about producing and creating the types of space that will engender those types of collisions,
Hmm.
right?
That's a powerful. It's interesting as you describe it. It's almost like an equation. The one releases the other, I guess, and maybe that was his brilliance there.
Well, maybe the book I'm working on right now is create space, invite possibility, and shape reality. Don't try to shape reality if you have not yet invited possibility. And don't try to invite possibility if you haven't created the right space. And so, yeah, the collision, collaboration, and creativity that you started us off on, I think it's very, very, it's very germane to what we're walking through right now.
Hmm. So, in the days that we're in, I mean, we're recording this episode. People listen to it lots of different times, but we're
Sure.
recording this episode in early 2021, and
Mhm.
in our country and in our province where we live, we are in lockdown right now. We are entering the possibility. They're talking about maybe curfews, all this stuff, which interrupts in a very tangible way our ability to collide with one another.
Yeah.
What's the best practice that you could encourage today for me as a leader in this environment where those natural collision points are removed? They're
Hmm.
not within. It's like it feels like it's just beyond our reach. It's like you want to
Yeah.
grab it, but you can't. So how do I, as a leader in this environment, create some of that possibility and and then as I move into the future, when we get back to some normalcy, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
what would your best advice for best practice look like?
Right. So when you think about creating space so that possibility is invited in, uh, one of the things that will never ever be the same in our world is uh, what used to be was a classroom of people who were all going through learning together, let's say.
Right.
Well, that will never be the same anymore because you will always have an integrated learning space where some people are working from home or some sort of virtual office, and some people, they will be face to face by August or whatever. Let's just say the vaccines are what we hope they will be. And so, how do we learn integrative thinking? And integrative thinking is uh, not giving into that binary either or, now or never, all or nothing. And so as we meet together, how do we ensure that the people who are experiencing this virtually are not paying a price as we who are face to face are experiencing all those crazy, wonderful hormones like dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin and whatnot that have to do with proximity. So, if those people can't be proximal to us, what must we do to compensate for that removal and that distance? So, some things that we can do. You've been in the situation, Tim, where let's say you're just in a conference call, you don't have video, kind of in the old days, and somebody says something, you say something, and you think it's really kind of important and useful. And what you hear as soon as you say it is crickets. Inside Tim's mind right now is self-doubt. And do they think I'm an idiot? Did I just cross a line? Well, no, that's not what's happening. What's happening around the conference table, half a world away, is people are nodding their heads, going, this guy's a freaking genius, right? But you don't see that.
Right.
You don't know that. And so what we do in all of these situations is we have to be able to acknowledge what matters most and be able to have a positive grasp of what the other people are saying and very quickly acknowledge where that lands for us, because those gaps, they produce leakage
Hmm.
of cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and our brain begins to contract. So again, back to space creating possibility.
Right.
uh, in our conversations, whether we're all on Zoom or whether there's an integrated group, if we can make sure that there's a cadence of, I put my baby out there. Well, we don't want to drop the baby. And so when it comes from my hands to yours, let's make sure that we acknowledge not just some sort of parroting, not some wooden, unmagical, so if I understand you correctly, but in a really your own native way, you're letting the other person know, I see you.
Hmm.
You're seen here. You're heard here. You matter here. Your voice is making a difference here. And just somehow registering that in the conversation, because that produces energy.
And you think about it, it's so simple on one level, but so easy for us to move away from. I mean, as you said, just the power of acknowledgement, being seen, being acknowledged. Because if not, I mean, most people, particularly, I think every human, but those of us who maybe have some internal insecurities and a sense of we're not sure how we work here or fit in, that silence is a powerful self-defeating force that will cause us not to contribute in the future or to
It's
collaborate in the
it,
future.
it's so true. And Tim, I think this is the dark side of empathy is uh, I actually, these mirror neurons that we have, they allow me to actually track with you. But because I don't take the time to acknowledge that back, um, this, this, the dark side of empathy is I get enough of your narrative and I bypass the step of feeding it back. And then I jump to what I want to talk about.
Right.
And so as I speak that out, what happens inside of you is you just took all the airtime.
Right.
I had an experience like this, Tim. My third child, Tyler, was going to a school out in the East Coast, got into a bad accident. There were 5 of them in the vehicle. I was in my dining room, got a phone call that every parent dreads. Tyler's in the hospital and said, Dad, we've been broken up really bad. We're going to live. And then I saw, subsequently, I saw images of the vehicle. It was twisted. It was charred because it caught on fire, blew up. So I'm out with a friend the next night, friend that I really, really have, a lot of room for. And I simply just told him the story. Here's what happened to Tyler. No sooner had I finished him about telling him the story. And he's a smart guy. But as soon as I finished, he said, well, you won't believe what happened to me in Chicago last weekend.
Uh,
My energy went through the floor, right?
yeah.
And then I was with another guy but who also knew Tyler well. And I told him a story. No sooner had I finished, and he said, what was it like the first time you saw him again? I said, well, I came running up the stairs. I heard the doorbell, and I came running up. I grabbed hold of Tyler. And so I think what we're looking for is let's not allow the dark side of empathy to trigger an autobiographical narrative or just jumping to the next idea without creating the space of acknowledgement, which releases the sense of I'm seen, I'm heard, I matter, I'm valued. And with that, oxytocin, right, which releases all those wonderful juices of the sense of rapport and connection and trust building, and then dopamine and serotonin. We won't go into all of those,
Yeah.
but those hormones, those super performance hormones, they don't just happen spontaneously. They get released in conversation.
Hmm. Oh, I know it's powerful. I'm thinking as you talk, I'm thinking about a leader that I work with now who's just transitioning into a different role, assuming the presidency of the organization that they've worked for a long time. And the unique gift, interestingly enough, that COVID has been to them is that they had a very heavy travel schedule, and obviously because of COVID have not been traveling.
Yeah.
And as you talk, what I'm realizing is the gift it gave them is more collision
Hmm.
with her people.
Hmm.
So she found herself not colliding with the market or colliding with an airport and taxis, but she
Yeah.
found herself colliding, with people on the floor of her manufacturing facility in a way that she never would have. And that collision is releasing positive things. And I'm just recognizing as you say that we don't often think of the words like this, but it's a great word. And so, as you're listening to this podcast today, that's something I think you should think about. I think you should ask yourself, are you creating as a leader collision points? Are you creating plates to collide with people? So it can release that collaboration and creativity and as Brady said earlier, the possibility. And you, I'm also thinking, it's, I mean, when possibility and opportunity kiss, when they come together, I mean,
Mm.
it's really like nuclear fusion. Such great energy comes from this, which in some ways, I guess, everything that you've been about for so long. It's about finding that place of energy, releasing something that becomes catalytic. And it's just a really powerful reminder. Leadership is not that complicated at the end of the day.
Yeah. And when you talk about the nuclear part of it, the chair that I'm sitting on, the chair that you're sitting on right now, uh, it's only holding you up because of collisions.
Hmm.
At the molecular level, we just got these atoms bouncing in and these molecules bouncing
Yeah.
off of each other all the time. And I think there are a bunch of things that we have a kind of a pejorative connotation about collisions as one of them, because we think of automobiles.
Right. Hmm.
But that in any organization where this function uh, has this, even just a brief collision
Yeah.
with another, there is an opportunity, there's possibility there. Another word that we run into a lot that people put a very negative value on that is amazingly powerful is tension.
Hmm.
And so, when I'm with leaders, I'm always asking them, what is it that is right inside tension that you absolutely need every single day? And when they get thinking of it, of course, where they're going to go. They're going to go, okay, right inside tension, you have energy. Yeah. You don't get to decide whether energy will be released from the tension you have with another person or
Hmm.
with your customers, or right. But you do get to decide whether that energy will be collaborative energy, creative energy, or whether it will be that trust sapping, suspicion inducing, that kind of energy. And so, how the space that we create determines how the energy will be released from tension.
Hmm.
So right now, in the
Interesting.
middle of COVID, in the middle, I mean, last week in Washington,
Right.
again, people could be listening to this at any time, but this is January, what, 11 or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, we have no shortage of tension. And Tim, I would say one of the biggest gifts that our organization gives to leaders is the ability to step into tension and to be able to release that creative energy out of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And uh, that is an amazing thing, because I think, at the inside of our physiology, we've got thousands of years of tension is bad and
Right.
it's dangerous. And so inclining ourselves to, there's possibility right inside the tension.
Hmm.
That's a different way of thinking.
No, that is. I mean, again, you're taking two words today of the words we talked about that have negative collision and tension, and they again, yeah, I think we hear those words, we envision all the poor things, the bad outcomes,
Yeah,
but really there's pregnant possibilities locked within these things if we can understand that it's the same idea, but we're releasing something of a positive nature
totally.
within that discussion. So
Can I give you a quick
yeah,
example of that?
please do, yeah.
This is a leader that I really respect. Leslie Thompson used to be the CEO of Kingston General Hospital.
Hmm.
So Kingston General Hospital wasn't always like it is today in terms of excellence, but they were having some very significant issues like adverse medical events. And so they were doing town halls. And one of the people in this one town hall was a woman who had just lost her husband due to a medical mistake.
Wow.
So now you got Leslie and her senior team are in this town hall, and this woman is livid. And you talk about tension. You talk about a collision that you think, this is the worst. The fact that she would be in this town hall,
Yeah.
this town hall is going to ignite. It's volatile. And so Leslie Thompson says, there's no way for us to make this right for you. There's no way that I could ever make you whole. What matters most to you now? And she said, I just want to know that this will never happen to anybody else. And Leslie Thompson said, would you help us? That was the birth of an army of patient experience advisors. Inside Kingston General, they ended up having offices, and they ended up having, I can't remember, it was almost 100 patient experience advisors. There was an energy tapped up in the tension. We see these bad things happening. I want to contribute. I want to make a difference. There was just no mechanism. So she steps into the tension, and with that ability to acknowledge, right? Acknowledge the pain, to have that person feel seen and feel heard. What comes out of that is this incredible energy towards creativity.
Yeah, interesting. So, at the sake of being wrong, and that's okay because I've been wrong lots of my life, I'm gonna ask you something and see if I'm tracking with you. So, if I apply my limited knowledge of physics and energy and the second law of thermodynamics that suggests to us that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only can be redistributed
Right.
effectively or redirected.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, in a sense, what we're talking about? That energy is within it's amoral. It is what it is, and somehow we can decide to channel it, redirect it towards the purpose of collaboration and growth and change. Is that sort of what's happening in the room?
For sure. And I would just say, Tim, that the second law of thermodynamics, which a lot of people look at and say, okay, well, it's about entropy, right? It's about everything's always going to wind down. And there's truth to that, for sure. But there's another way to look at the second law of thermodynamics, and that is energy will always spread.
Hmm.
So the hot tea has spread to the mug.
Right.
You can count on that. We've got a town hall, and we've got a woman with unbelievable heat.
Yeah.
And we've got a senior team that doesn't feel that heat at all, really. I
Right.
mean,
Not in the
they're
same way.
cooler.
Yeah.
And what's happening is Leslie Thompson is ensuring that there's a mechanism that will allow that heat to spread in a way that transforms that energy, which at this point is still just kind of deconstructive, right? It's
Right.
like blaming and threatening. But could we transform that energy into a different form that will be incredibly productive? So leaders, so here's what I think about. If I can ask you to visualize something,
I'll do
all
it.
right? And your listeners, as you're listening to this, just visualize water coming down the face of a mountain. Once you get that, just second image, a water park with water just rushing. So now that we've got those two images in our mind, we just say, okay, what does that mean? Energy always follows the underlying structure.
Hmm.
If in this room here, I take these curtains and I take the drywall off, what you'll see is electrical lines. Energy will always follow the underlying structure.
Right.
So what leaders do when they're brilliant is they look at how can I, and the other thing, energy always follows the path of least resistance. So how can I create a structure that produces a path of least resistance through which energy wants to flow? So when you're coaching, if you're a VP and you're sitting listening to Tim's podcast right now, and you say, okay, I have to coach a director or a manager, you could ask yourself, how could I structure that conversation so that energy will flow in a way that produces a creative collision and will produce a sense of possibility? Well, if you start the conversation saying, what are you going to do next? And how are you going to track that? You've just created a path of massive resistance.
Right.
Whereas if you start and say, hey, in this coaching conversation, I just want to know what matters most to you and what's your aspiration, right? What would you really like to do? And what's getting in your way? Well, you have created a path of least resistance that is so easy for that person to step into and to be able to give their energy to. So there's 100 ways Structure, that's your mission, vision, values, that's your team norms, that's your website. I mean, there's all sorts of ways where we can structure our organization so energy flows.
That's great. It's a great picture, first of all, and that's a great encouragement. And again, please don't lose that if you're listening. If you're responsible for structure, that's a great question. Is your structure a pathway? That's I've never thought about structure in that way. I'm not really. That's not an image or an idea I've played around a lot with, but it makes a lot of sense to me as you're talking about it. And as I
Yeah.
think about great leaders I've worked with, they either did it because they understood it or inherently they knew it. But when I think about it, that's partly what they did. They made people find a place where the thing they wanted to do became the thing that was the most beneficial to the group, and they were able to align all that, and
I
that's a
think you're
powerful
bang
gift.
on.
It's a
I
powerful
think you're
gift.
bang on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Interesting. So listen, your first book that you wrote, I mean, you've
Yeah.
written you've written 4 books, right? You're working on another one, you said.
Yeah, that's true.
Your first book was called was about conversations, right?
Hmm.
And it came out of the title of Under Juice, which is also the name of the company that
Hmm.
you started. And I think you co-founded that with Alex, didn't you?
That's
Was it
right.
Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And Alex is
real.
still my business partner. He's
Uh,
he's basically kind of taken an early retirement right now and left me to slug it out.
well, good. He's taking the
Yeah.
path of least resistance, brother. That's funny. He just got there before you.
But this year will be 18 years that Alex and I have been business partners.
That's awesome, man. So
We
so
have
this
had
it's
we have
crazy.
had some of the richest, most amazing end times, and we have had probably the most difficult conversations any two business partners have ever had.
Ah, did you? Oh, you found something in the tension.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's yeah. Scott. I've mentioned this before in a couple other podcasts. Scott Peck, who you may know, but Scott
Yeah,
Peck
yeah,
coined this idea of the tunnel of chaos years ago, and it's that place where we go in and wrestle out, fight it out with
yeah.
people, and figure it out. We don't go in there unless we want real relationship. If we're
That's right.
done, we say screw it. I don't want to do that anymore. But in that tension, if we wrestle tension, it means that we want something together, which you know that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. But listen, I want to ask you this question because it's just so tied to what you're doing. But this
Sure.
idea of juice and juices, and and you hear like getting the juices flowing and all this stuff, the stuff we think about. What does that mean to you, and why is that such a critical idea and for leaders to understand and to release in their
Yeah.
organizations?
Well, you've said it. I mean, and if we asked 100 leaders, when you're in that brainstorming session and it there's movement happening and something is going down now finally, and somebody says, "Oh, the juices are starting to flow here." What do they mean? Well, when I ask a group of leaders that, well, let me just ask you that. If somebody says the juices are starting to flow here, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I'd say ideas. I'd say positive energy. I would say people are motivated. People are getting it. They want to get it done. They want to get in. That's what comes to my mind.
Totally. And so if I just try to sum that up, the volume of ideas is crazy. Uh, the novelty of the ideas, they're not garden variety ideas. And then thirdly, the usability or
Mm.
the promise behind this idea and how it could change our business or this situation. So there's this crazy fluidity that's happening around those three things. And of course there's the whole vibe of what's happening in the team as well. But the juices are flowing. So that's one juice. That's dopamine. Dopamine makes us insanely creative, unlocks ingenuity, innovation. It's the seeking drive, motivation, goal orientation. So, it's an electrochemical transmitter, neurotransmitter in our brain that spans that chasm, right? Because there's the potential of action or an idea, but at that nothing happens unless that can span the synaptic cleft right over to the receptor. And what does that is the superhero called dopamine, right? It jumps across. So that's one. But if you want the superpower of, so this is your sales conversation here. being able to create incredibly quick connection and rapport and trust and bonding and the sense that I would work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's oxytocin,
Yep.
right? And there are things that you can do that will release oxytocin in another person's brain. There's another one that everybody would know. It's serotonin. What's serotonin? It's a superpower. It gives you that agency, the belief, the confidence, the self-efficacy, a sense of invincibility that we can do this. So, Tim, what you and I have both experienced is moments of flow where we lose track of time and we are so insanely productive in those, let's say, 2 or 3 hours that we probably produce more than we would have on an 8 hour day where we weren't in flow.
Yep.
Well, what's happening there is it's not just a 1 + 1 + 1. So the superpower of relational energy that comes from oxytocin and the superpower of creative energy that comes from dopamine and the superpower of achieving energy that comes from serotonin. When those three are working together and you feel connected and you feel creative and you feel confident, it's some crazy multiplier that we scientists do not yet understand. We know it almost anecdotally. We know it in our gut. We know that, man, when these things are happening, I'm going to do just about anything. So if we create the right space, we can have those three things happening in a brainstorming meeting, in a coaching session, in a sales call, in a strategy meeting. And so that for me is very productive or very provocative.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the thing that makes that so provocative for me is that, as you said at the beginning, we have this wild-eyed, big-ass vision of every person deserves to have energy left over at the end of the day. That means I probably have been working in a situation where this pulsing creativity has been happening throughout the day. Because if I am in the state of flow, if I am highly productive, I go home with a good tired, but not the bad tired.
Right.
And in COVID, that really matters.
Yeah, it's just I think about sustainability. I think of all these things, and so let me give me if you were gonna if I you were coaching me, and I know that you provide coaching for lots of different people
Yeah.
and teach people and encourage them. But if you were giving me one strategy or idea that you would say, hey Tim, if you want to get the juices flowing more often with your team, here's one thing I'd strongly encourage you to make sure you're doing. What would at least that one thing be to me?
Yeah, such great questions. Just gotta pause and say that for a second. So let's just say,
I have no answers. I just have questions.
uh, let's just say that Tim Windsor wakes up tomorrow morning and asks himself, what kind of energy do I need today? Do I need relational energy? Do I need structuring energy? Do I need creative energy? Do I need achieving energy? Or do I need difference making energy? They're different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've got a stack of podcasts that you got to record, well, there's probably some uh, connective or that kind of relational energy, and potentially some of that structuring energy. So let's just say that the relational energy is one that you go, yeah, I definitely need that, which is not true if you are booked for a full day of writing tomorrow.
Right.
But let's say it is relational energy, then here's one tool that you can do for 3 or 4 minutes at the beginning of your day. You can tap into gratitude about a moment with profound connection with another in a relationship that matters to you. So I'll just walk people through this for a second. What I do is I just get quiet. I scan the the landscape of my life and I just start looking for a relationship that really matters to me. I'm just thinking about my daughter, Rachel, right now. And Rachel and I are both triathletes and we love to train together. And I'm thinking about a bike ride that I was on with Rachel last summer. It was actually at the end of the summer, and she was talking about her son, Lucas, and him wanting to get these basketball shoes. And it just was this moment of tension, but she had this insight. And what happened was a crazy, wonderful outcome. But at the end of the ride, we just got back to her place and we just went, wasn't that an amazing conversation we just had with each other? So all I have to do is dial up the sights, the sounds, the smells of that conversation, the gratitude and appreciation that I have for those moments. And what is happening inside of my brain is oxytocin is flowing richly.
Well, it's the power of visualization. It's all those things at work. So as we come out of this time, and we're gonna finish up, obviously, we could talk for days about all these things, and
Mm-hmm.
and I have the energy for it for sure now after this conversation.
Yeah, me
This is what
too.
I love about doing what I do is the more I talk to people, the more I talk to people like you who you burst my brain half the time with what you say. I get so jacked about the
I can imagine.
experience. I don't care if anybody ever listens. I'm learning so much from podcasting. I'm
You
I'm
the
having I'm having a
you get
blast,
the
man.
you get the luckiest job in the world,
I
man.
know it's amazing. And so listen, if you're listening to this conversation, and let's say you're a leader, and don't excuse yourself from being a leader. Somebody say, I'm not a leader because I'm just a mom, or I'm not a leader because I'm this. No, we're all leaders at some level. But
Mm-hmm.
think about this: what energy do you need, and do your people need, whoever your people are? Do they need creative energy? Do they need belief energy? What energy do they need, and how can you help them connect to it, to create it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we become energy producers, for others and ourselves, and not energy sappers? Because that's another thing. I mean, we can,
Yeah,
I know some leaders who are really gifted at sucking all the oxygen out of the room, Brady, and then wonder why they can't light their people on fire. I mean, it's
I'm
like they've
sure
got
you do.
they got a gift. It's like they act like a big straw. They suck all the oxygen out, and they try to light a match, and nothing happens, and they blame their people. so,
I know.
so this is really a critical idea. These are interesting things. Listen, if you haven't experienced Brady's books, get them. If you're a company and you need somebody to come in and engage your people and engage you, track down Brady and his team. I'm seriously, like they'll ignite a fire within you, and it'll catalyze something for you and them in a way that many other kinds of experiences won't. I know this from my own experience brilling into these things, so it's really powerful. So listen, as we wrap up, Brady, here's my question. You know that the typical arc of this podcast is this idea of uncommodification, of taking
Mm-hmm.
something that's readily and accessible everywhere, could be a product or service, but unfortunately sometimes is us as people. And how do we uncommodify and stand out? So my question to you is, on your best day, Brady, because every once in a while you don't have great days, you're human,
Oh
but
yeah.
on your best day, when you're uncommodifying, when you're standing out and standing up for all the right reasons and bringing the Brady, bringing the unique sense of who you are, what does that look like for you in your world? At your uncommodified best, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Propagating ideas, typically,
Hmm.
like we're doing right now, that produce hope inside people.
Uh,
And I would say that that can be about many different things, but typically, Tim, for some reason, it's typically about energy, and maybe it's the crucible that we're in right now. Uh, but I would say the uncommodified Brady is the one that it's taken me. I'm 62 years. It's taken me a long time to find out what is my voice,
hmm.
and to be able, with a voice that is vulnerable and authentic, um, to be able to come to the world and say that we actually can go home at the end of the day, or we're not going home, we are home, but we can, at the end of the day, we can have energy left over for our kids, for our partner, for our world, uh, and that actually matters.
Brilliant.
And there are practical, simple ways. uh, I am obsessed with managing energy in my own life.
Hmm.
And if people knew some of the things that I did to do this, it would be almost embarrassing. But I believe in this stuff.
Yeah.
I think that we in 2021 we need energy like we've never needed it before.
Hmm.
And so I'm here to take down depletion.
Hmm. That's, what, powerful. And I would just say, I think, again, if you're looking to uncommodify yourself, to stand up and stand out in your world, what I hear Brady saying is, hey, be a person of hopefulness, be a person of addition, not subtraction, not deletion.
Yeah.
these are, maybe they shouldn't be uncommodifying things, but they are. We live in a world where often the normative is not life giving. It's not hope giving. And it's not even a word we use a lot. Even think of the word hope or hopeful, hopefulness. These are maybe words of days gone by back, when they talked in other languages and they were in the king's court. Hope is a powerful force.
It is.
And I do agree with you, Brady. The uncommodified are hope givers. And I know from whenever I chat with you, I leave the conversation more full of energy, more full of hope, more full of possibility than I came into those conversations. And that's what really excites me about it. So, one last opportunity for you today to encourage or challenge the people who've chosen to listen, to give us a small amount of their time. Each of us today had 1,440 minutes in this hourglass, and you chose to spend the better part of an hour with us today for some reason.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'd like to believe there's a certain destiny in the collision that we're
Mm-hmm.
having right now with
Mm-hmm.
you through iTunes or Spotify or Pandora, wherever you're listening. There's a collision moment opportunity here. And so as you collide with these listeners, our listeners today, one last time, Brady, what impression, what impact do you want to leave in this last collision? What do you want to encourage them about?
I want them to know, and I want you as the listener to know, that people do not leave your presence neutral, that people leave your presence either more energized or more depleted, and that how you show up and the space that you create for other human beings will either release those beautiful neurotransmitters, the juices, really. It will either release those juices or it will release the survival juices, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, which constrict the brain. So every interaction that you're about to go into, be an alchemist. An alchemist takes the base and makes it something precious, takes something common and makes it something that is incredibly valuable. So what is common? What is base? Interactions. You will have 100 today. How do you take an interaction and turn it into a connection?
Mm.
How do you take a transaction and turn it into that beautiful collision that Tim's been talking about that creates a sense of possibility and that actually shapes the reality for both of you? That's what I would really encourage people to do.
Awesome. Brady, again, thanks so much for your time. It's such a gift. You're a busy guy like all of us, and you giving me the gift of your time today, and my listeners, I appreciate it. And so, listen, as we wrap up, guys, here's what I want to say. As you mull over this conversation, I'd really encourage you to do that. If all you do is visit this thing and then press stop and you move on, you're going to miss the pregnant opportunity of this collision today, of the collaboration and the creativity that can be released. Please don't do that, because you're listening for a reason. I really believe that. And so as you begin to stir this up and figure it out and connect yourself to your own juices, the juices start flowing because of this conversation. Do me a favor, email me at tim@theuncommodified.com or check me out in social media and let Brady and I know what juices are starting to flow as a result of this conversation, and then what are you doing with them
Yeah.
as you take this and you uncork this conversation, you release its energy and you release the fragrance of the spirit within the bottle. Like when I uncork a great bottle of whiskey, what are you doing to uncork these things in your lives? Thanks again for listening today, and have an excellent day.